I am being joined by Ken from Insightful Partners today. We're going to talk about health and wellness.
Hi, Jared.
Hello, how are you today?
I'm great. I'm great. How are you?
Great as well. Can you share a bit about your role and how it fits into the bigger picture?
Absolutely, Jared. Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. We've at Insightful Partners, we've spent almost 8 years. We're helping business owners in the $5 million to $50 million in sales space get better at running the business side of things, KPIs, forecasting, dashboards, all those sorts of good things that help interpret the numbers and sort of take their decision making from intuition to insight. Over the last year or so, we've also been developing an idea around additional bandwidth and focus for the leadership team, sort of starting with the founder, the entrepreneur, the leader, the CEO, the president. And it occurred to us that in many ways, just like there are balance sheets and profit and loss statements and cash flow reporting for businesses, that there's some equivalence perhaps in the leadership's body, if you will. Where does everyone on the leadership team fit at the current time? So we can talk a little bit about how those map, but it's really about finding additional focus and bandwidth for the leadership team, as well as that sort of bandwidth and focus for the business as well.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's very interesting. I haven't dove into anything like this as far as along these lines go, but so what does a typical day look like for you?
Our typical day, well, it's a lot like a lot of our entrepreneurs. There's always more things to do than there is time for. But we work with our clients, one on one. There's six of us here on the Insightful Partners team, and much of our work is monthly financial meetings where we help them interpret the data, and whether that's interpreting data from their business or interpreting data from their personal side, if you will. We work in sort of 90-day sprints. We find three big things for them to work on and focus on those three big things for usually 90 days, 3 months. And then we measure things all the way along the way to make sure those are the right things to be focusing on and whether the data we're collecting supports that. We hold our clients accountable in many ways, because if things don't get accomplished, it's usually one of two things. It's either a lack of bandwidth or a lack of focus. If it's a lack of bandwidth, we help them find ways of increasing that bandwidth. Some of our technology makes things move quicker, faster, better, maybe focusing them on adding some resources on their side. But if it's a question of focus, then that's a different conversation. That's, do you really want to do these things, or these are the things that you really want to accomplish? Do the things we're measuring fit with your vision and your mission? Is this things that you're really committed to, or things you think you just should do, or things that perhaps there's things getting in the way of doing them? So that focus piece is a big part of it.
Okay. What kind of tools are you implementing to help with those sorts of things?
On the business side, it's the typical dashboards. And I say that because most people have been exposed to dashboards. But if you haven't, that's just a graphical picture, a visual picture of the numbers. It's sort of a state of the state of your business and what you choose to concentrate on. So we're using platforms from Microsoft or platforms from other vendors that attach to QuickBooks or attach to other ERP or bookkeeping or financial systems, as well as some non-financial data, maybe taking things out of your CRM, out of your HR system, anywhere we can gather some data about what's currently happening and tie that to the financials. We find that to be helpful in sort of determining where your business is now and where it might be going. And then on the personal side, we are looking at lab results. We think of those as sort of the balance sheet of the body at any given time, what your biomarkers are in those blood tests that you're doing. And then we take a look at the activity that you as the leader or you as the executive team is doing. Think of those as surplus and deficits around daily steps, weekly steps, heart rate, HRV, heart rate variability, if you will, sleep patterns, REM sleep hours or minutes, any of those things that we can measure that help us determine if there's sort of a deficit or a surplus going on with the body so that it can recover every day and be ready for the challenges of the next day. And then we also do a little work around the DNA, because we think that's your organizational structure. That's the equivalent of your charter. That's the equivalent of your organizational documents for your business. That's what you started with. your cash flow statement is the energy, the calories, the food that you consume and digest and excrete. And we sort of take a peek at what that looks like with all those systems working inside the body. And then finally, we're doing a little bit of work around the culture of your business. The equivalent culture of your body would be your epigenetics. What are you doing with your set of circumstances, your DNA and your markers, and what are you doing to increase your lifespan, but more importantly, your health span?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, it's very, very in depth. Sounds like you guys cover a lot of things when you're looking at somebody's health.
Well, the beautiful part is most of these are readily available now. The technology is such that it's not a big lift to get all of it in place, either for the business or for the personal side, because it's all existing digitally, and there's wonderful platforms that exist to help us as sort of the coach and the guide, if you will, around what that looks like so we can interpret it. But also there's a lot of client facing dashboards, visualizations that they can use on an hourly, daily, weekly basis to see where they are as well. So it helps both sides of things, and that technology really makes it a lot easier than it was even 5 or 10 years ago.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, this is all very interesting. I have some other questions about that. I'm gonna circle back to that. But um, what major shifts are you seeing in the industry right now, or in your industry?
Sure, in the wellness side, we're seeing a tremendous amount of interest. I think that there's a change in leadership in Washington, an opening up, if you will, of alternatives to traditional pharma, traditional medicine. And while those are wonderful industries doing wonderful things, there are alternatives. And for many people, those alternatives may be a better pathway. I like to think of Western medicine as an all-in approach. Sort of, if I'm in a car accident, then and there's a lot of trauma, then I'm gonna do whatever it takes to make my body survive, and all hands on deck. But if I'm dealing with something that took a long time to develop, then I'm likely going to need a little bit of time for that to undevelop. And I think that there are other approaches: holistic, functional, natural, Eastern, a lot of different holistic, a lot of different adjectives to describe sort of a more body first, body centric, cellular centric approach to getting better, that don't require the intervention of outside drugs, outside protocols, and all of that. It's a complicated area. It's filled with both snake oil and tremendous accomplishments, but I think we're at a point where more and more of the data is coming out about some alternative treatments that have been around for a very long time. And again, it's focused on the body itself. It took a while for the body to reach the state you're in, so it might take a while for the body to get back to the state it needs to be.
Yeah, that's something that I was always told when I was going through my experiences. I remember there was some formula that a lot of them told me that they heard, like, hey, if it took this long for you to, get to here, this is, kind of how long it's going to take for you to treat the problem, or, whatever it is you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Because people want this quick fix, right? I think I was going to the wellness clinic I was going to. I mean, I went every week, and I had to drive to Idaho to do it. So every week I was driving to Idaho, and I would just be there all day. That was for 3 years. It took 3 years of, a lot of, and I was doing mostly blood treatments, and they were doing the same thing you're saying, like checking biomarker, like taking my blood regularly, and looking at labs, and doing a lot. I did a lot of blood treatments. That was mostly what I did, but anyway, it's still all very fascinating. And they had me tracking my sleep, like you said, and um, the doctor wanted to be able to download my information and see, REM and deep sleep, and so
Yeah, and so for us, why wait until you're in that state to do those things? Why not do it when you're feeling relatively healthy, when you're feeling relatively well? Much like we counsel people that no matter how good your gross profit is or your net income is, likely it could get better with more focus. And so, regardless of what your health looks like and what your bandwidth and sort of mental acuity looks like, it could probably get better with focus as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree, right? They say that the preventative is the best medicine, right? Like
It
it's
is.
focus on that instead of waiting for some catastrophe.
Correct, correct. And I think also there's just so much information out there, whether you're on X or on Facebook or any of the other feeds. There's no shortage of people telling you to do exactly this to get these exact results. And I've been at this for the better part of 25 years, and I sometimes have a hard time deciding what it is I should eat tomorrow or today. There's so many different pieces of information. It's a bit overwhelming. So we work on pulling together sort of the best resources to find out for every individual what's happening with that individual at the current time, because sometimes the state of your body will be different in the doctor's office than it is when you get home. The body changes throughout the day. There's what's known as the sort of the blood pressure always gets read higher in the doctor's office than it does at home. That's just one simple example of how the body can change hour to hour, minute to minute, certainly day to day. So we try and focus on things that you feel what the body's doing, or let the body tell you what it's doing, and then approach it from that way. But there's just an overwhelming amount of information out there. And just like on the financial side, it can be overwhelming to look at all the data. It can be that overwhelming on the personal side as well.
But yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, my little brother's a vegan, and we've had these conversations. I'm like, hey, I can show you just as much data that eating meat is okay that he can show me that going vegan is the best, right? It's like yeah, there's just so much information out there. How do you know what is the correct or best information? Yeah, I think it takes a lot of research and critical thinking, right? And decision making.
Well, I think we've been taught by science that there's one true answer out there, and the more you study it, the more you get closer to that one true answer. And I just feel like more and more we're deciding that the answers is variable. The answers are multiple. The answers are this way at this time and this other way at that other time. Just like you said, there are times when a vegan approach can be very beneficial, and there are times where a vegan approach can be very, very, very difficult on the body. And understanding more about when those things apply, I think helps us understand why we might want to do things one way or another. I do know the body does like change. The body adapts pretty quickly to any given routine. So the ability to sort of mix things up a little bit, like we had in most of our cultivation of our culture, of our species, that change sort of drives, I think, a lot of metabolism, and drives a lot of energy, and drives a lot of awareness in the body. And I think doing the same thing over and over again, which is kind of more science based, sort of more, here's the answer, so just do this answer and you'll be fine. To take nothing away from science at all, but I do think there's times where variability matters just as much as consistency.
Right. Yeah, no, that I agree. I don't think it's a lot more complicated than just one answer.
It is. It is.
So as far as that goes back to the industry right now and the shifts that you were talking about, and the this new administration, how do you think that's impacted your business and growth strategy?
I think that there's lots more opportunities for people who are interested. The question is, how do you convert someone's interest into actual treatment, or actual belief in it? And that's, I think, where the challenge is. I think historically there's been a growth in alternative medicine approaches from the consumer, whether that's because they haven't had great success with traditional medicine, or they're just more open to things, or they've traveled other places. People travel to Europe and they talk about the things they eat in Europe, and they don't gain weight, and the same things they eat in the United States, they gain weight or get bloated or feel bad. So, the more people do that, the more they might be open to a different approach. But I think there's been an awful lot of multiple opinions on single items, multiple opinions that have been squashed, that I think we're going to find more and more, I hate to use the word evidence, but more and more data around how it could, there could be some alternatives to the traditional way of how we looked at things. So I think as that information gets propagated, and again, we have wonderful social media platforms that again can either be telling the truth, or complete and total lies. But there is a lot of truth out there, and I think as that truth filters out, and more people talk about it, the more people that I talk to about my personal journey with my difficulties, the more I find that they've got some as well. And so I think overall, I think as a nation, we're not as healthy as we could be. Overall, I think we're, some of the trends are very difficult, whether that's obesity or whether that's diabetes or whether that's cancer, whether that's heart conditions, whatever that looks like, for the amount of money that we spend per capita and in total, and all the resources we have at our disposal. I'm not sure we're seeing those same results in the population or in the young people as well. So I think people are more open to alternatives, and each day they become a little bit more open. And so the challenge for people in this space is to find ways of explaining to people who have only known the medical side of things, only known the science side of things, or science as we've defined it in the education system, how to reach out and get them to understand in ways that aren't, I'll just call it airy fairy, ways that aren't, they're beyond our typical ways of understanding, but that doesn't mean they're not potentially correct or potentially right. So I think the challenge is from a medical oriented, approach that we've all had throughout our lives. How do you make someone open? How do you convince someone or help educate them on alternatives and how that might be? Results help. You can call it airy fairy all you want, but if it does give you a result, well, that's good enough. But there's still a lot of people that are reluctant or resistant to some of these alternatives. Like how can you possibly do muscle testing and know what's up with my body? You have to look at my blood. There's no way you can know what's happening in my body without looking at my blood, for instance. And but there's a lot of evidence that says muscle testing works. So that's just one example. But again, trying to convince them of that in gentle and good ways, I think that's the challenge for our industry.
I actually was seeing somebody at one point that did the kinesiology, right? And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was very interesting because he knew things that I didn't tell him. You know what I mean? So that's when I was like, wow, okay, this is crazy.
Yeah. Hard to wrap your head around though, for those of us that, you know, are used to seeing just tell me what my blood is, tell me what that looks like.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was trying to be open minded to everything. Just I wanted to get better and was open to doing whatever I needed to do, right? To try to find. Well, I mean, it took me years just to find out what was wrong.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
because that's when I gave up on medical and started searching alternative, and they couldn't tell me what was wrong.
Yeah.
So,
Well, again, I think you were asking about the challenge, and the challenge would be how to get people to be more open to these things before it gets so extreme with the body. Before the body is enduring so much pain, so much inflammation, so much detritus. How can we get it when they're reasonably healthy, when these things are a lot easier to implement?
yeah, yes, I agree. I think that's that is a good question. How do you do that? Um, so what's working well for you right now, and what's been frustrating?
I think the frustrating piece is just how pervasive the mindset is of, I go to my doctor, I go to my specialist, and my specialist knows exactly what is wrong with me. But unfortunately, that specialist is not talking to any of the other specialists you might have in your life or in your medical history. So no one's looking holistically or functionally at the entire body and the entire situation. Everyone's just highly focused on the specialty that they're doing. And I think one of the challenges I see is the side effects of some of the pharma that is being consumed. If you spend some time reading what the side effects can be and truly understanding what that is, those can be some fairly scary things. So I think that's the frustration is the I hate to use the word blind, but the completely trusting nature of trusting in the medical profession when some of that might be misplaced. Not all of it. It's okay to trust your doctor, but trust but verify was something that worked for a long time with us as a nation. So I think trust but verify, taking your health into your own hands rather than subbing it out to a medical doctor, because they're just people as well, and they're only as good as their research science and what their toolkit is as well. So trying to get people, my frustration is trying to get people to retain responsibility for their health, not turn it over to blindly or completely to a practitioner. What's working well is the many alternatives that we're seeing. I'm fortunate enough to be able to travel to Europe a number of times and see some great technology, travel to Asia and see some great things happening in those other countries. We're in a place where we get exposed to a lot of new or old equipment with a new look, old theories with new technology around them. And there's a lot of neat things happening in this space. There's a lot of really cool stuff that's coming or is here that can really make a difference in people's lives. And so I'm excited about that as well.
Yeah, that's there was actually several of those treatments I mentioned to you were they were German specific treatments that this doctor was doing on me, and so there definitely seems to be a lot of that they've been doing for a little while. You know what I mean? Like in Europe and or parts of Europe, and that are just seen as kind of, or at least they were seen as kind of taboo, or does that really do anything? And I mean, my experience was great, right? Like I don't have the symptoms that I had anymore, and
Wonderful.
so it was. I mean, it was a great experience for me as far as the alternative route.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think Europe does a very good job of being open to those things. They're less, industrial complex oriented. They're sort of more grassroots oriented at times. Different countries, like you mentioned, have great things going on. Germany, in particular, does a very good job of taking a lot of research out of Russia. For instance, Russia has done a lot of research in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, the 1960s, 1970s, work around oxygen, hypoxia, did a lot of training for their Olympic athletes when the Olympics were in Mexico City. They trained people at sea level. They trained another data set high in the mountain, the Ural Mountains, and then they trained some that they moved between the two. And they found that those that trained by the Black Sea and those that trained in the Ural Mountains and alternated had much better results than those that trained in either one environment or another. So they've known that around hypoxia and work around oxygen since at least the 60s. So Germany, I think, has done a good job of taking some of that research and creating machines for Europe. Singapore and Malaysia, in particular, are doing a lot of work around lifespan and longevity for their people. A lot of good things are coming out of there. So it's wonderful to see what's happening in these different places. Norway is doing some great things. South Africa is doing some great things. So I'm personally excited that there might be some opportunity for some of these technologies to be at least looked at here in the United States.
I agree. I've been impressed by like what you're saying. Some of the things that are being focused on and talked about with this administration, and like even simple things that should have been banned a long time ago in our foods, right? Like it's crazy to think like these things have been banned in Europe for a long time, and a lot of ingredients that we use aren't allowed in Europe. And so yeah, I definitely know what you're talking about, and have been paying attention to some of those changes, or at least focusing on wanting to improve these things that have been broken for so long.
Yeah, and I think the food industry has been able to hold out the thought of, well, these things make it more affordable. These things allow us to feed more people. But I don't think our bodies were designed to snack all the time. I don't think our bodies were, designed to have food available whenever we want it. I was thinking the other day, in the late 70s, early 80s, I think Chrysler in the minivan was one of the first to put cup holders in their vehicles, and European cars for the next 10 or 15 years didn't have any cup holders, and Americans said, we need to have cup holders, and so they created these things only that the Europeans can create, very complicated structures for cup holders. Now cup holders are everywhere, but I'm not sure we were designed to drink things 24/7. I'm not sure that the concept of getting a cup of coffee to go rather than getting a cup of coffee and sitting down in a cafe and enjoying it. Do we really need to be doing multiple things while we're doing some of these things? So the concept of coffee, I happen to think coffee is very good for you, but I think the way you consume coffee and the coffee you consume is just as important as the coffee itself. So sitting down for a few minutes, taking in either a newspaper or a conversation in the morning while you're having your coffee, out and about, in sunlight, circadian rhythm work, red light work, interaction with other people, and then getting in your car and driving versus drive through Starbucks or Dutch Brothers and getting your coffee at the same time you're talking on the phone and the same time you're listening to a podcast. those are two different things. They both involve coffee, but I think the way we consume things is just as important as what we consume.
I agree. Yeah, it's not everything is equal, right? Like what as far as your business goes, which metrics are you most focused on improving?
We focus a lot on, I'll just call it the recurring revenue concept. So there's basically in any business, there's usually two types of revenue. There's project based or single type of revenue. I'm selling one product, or I'm selling one project, or I'm selling one thing. And then there's the recurring part, which is we're attempting to sell over and over again to the same client. And if you think about client acquisition cost and client churn, the ability to sell over and over again to one client is actually very efficient and very effective. So we're always looking for ways that we can make sure that we're getting a second appointment, we're getting a third appointment. We're looking for ways that people are following our protocols or not following our protocols. If they're we don't do a lot of supplement work. That just doesn't have to be happen to be what we do. But if I were a provider of supplements, I'd be looking at, are they reordering every 30 days if there is a 30-day supply, or if they're not. So why aren't they following the protocol? Not just because it's good revenue, good money, but if the protocol was good to begin with, then ensuring that they perform the protocol is just as important as the protocol itself. So we look for things that are recurring. How many people make an appointment at the same time they're at the front desk? Do they make their next appointment? How good is the front desk at asking for those appointments next time? What is that? How do you keep the client coming back over and over again? How do you keep the value? How do you keep the value in their minds? How do you keep ensuring that you can be impactful for your methods and your things for them? So we track a lot of metrics around churn, around frequency, around consistency, because we think that's the most efficient and effective way to drive revenue and profits throughout the organization.
Okay. Yeah, I like this whole focus. I haven't heard of anybody doing what you're describing, like focusing on health and business, right? Like as far as such a structure, very structured this approach.
Yeah, we think what gets measured gets done, and that applies to the wealth and side of the world and the health side of the world as well.
So where do you want to be in 6 or 12 months from now, as far as this business goes?
Our mission is to increase wellness of executive teams. So we would love to have a bunch more people understand this philosophy, whether we do it or not, whether they talk to us or not, but just the concept of measuring things, you know, getting rid of brain fog, increasing mental focus, increasing mental acuity, increasing energy bandwidth, lessening absentee days, lessening burnout, lessening stress. Those are all the mission-driven things that we want to see in an organization, and those are the things we want to support from our wellness side as well. So we hopefully see a world where things are much more considered and thoughtful rather than reactive and panic.
Gotcha. I love it. If you could solve one major challenge today, what would it be?
This one's a personal one. I'd try and give everyone more sleep. I would gift everyone either an hour more of sleep or an hour's worth of better sleep.
Yeah, that's something I'm still trying to navigate.
Me too.
Honestly.
Me too. Yep.
It's an ongoing challenge.
It is. It is. It is. There's a lot of things that are working against us when it comes to sleep, including the availability of stimulation.
Right. Yes, for sure. I've noticed that, and even myself, of nights that I'm not on screens or not exposing myself to screens, and because I've read, like, dimming the lights an hour before bed, and not cutting screens off, and these kind of sleep habits that just contribute to better sleep.
Yes, yes. A lot of people have morning routines. I'm not sure. I'm not sure just as many people have evening routines, and so maybe just the importance of an evening routine. Start to go to bed an hour or two before you actually want to go to bed. Start thinking about what mindful things you can do to prepare your body and your mind for sleep. because we do the same things every morning. We have our morning rituals. I think those are very common. Coffee is usually involved, or tea, or some stimulant of some kind. Stretching, yawning, looking out at the world, a shower, getting dressed. Those are all morning rituals. So the evening rituals become more important rather than I fell asleep on the couch and now I got to drag myself to the bed and hopefully my clothes get taken off and I put some PJs on and I'll just jump into bed. So,
Right.
that mindfulness of preparing for the downside as well as the upside.
Right. Yeah. Like sleep hygiene. Right.
Yep. Sleep hygiene is a good way to put it. Good way to put it.
Um, my final question is, what does this look like as far as from now to actual implementation of the just simple laid out process of somebody beginning with you?
It starts with your labs. You either have existing labs that we can ingest and start to review, or we have a whole protocol of labs that we do depending on what it is that is ailing you or you think is ailing you. We have electromagnetic scans that we do to see what energy is happening inside of your body. We've got DNA testing that we do to see where you're coming from. We have epigenetic testing that we do to see how well you're dealing with your genes. And we've got all kinds of dashboards around wearables and metrics. So we'll ask you to take your Aura ring and attach it to our platform, or your Whoop ring. We'll ask you to take your pedometer or your steps or any of your Apple Health data and roll it into our platform. And then we can both look at what's happening. We think the trend is your friend. We think one slice of data is a lonely number, but a series of numbers over time does tell a story. So the sooner we can get started looking at that story, the sooner we can do things that will meaningfully impact it without having side effects or consequences on the body or the mind.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I know we kind of talked about that. I just wanted to have a full overview of the process, which I love my Aura ring, by the way. I've been wearing one of those for years.
Yes, yes. It's
Um,
it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes it's depressing to look at the results, and other times it's encouraging. So trying to keep a positive spin on even a negative result is something we work with our clients a lot with. Every day does not have to be a great day. It's okay for the body to regress a little bit.
right. Well, perfect. I definitely appreciate your time, and yeah, that was all great information. What what is the best way to reach you and start this process? I know Insightful Partners is the name of the company, correct?
Yep, Insightful Partners website. You can get in touch with us there. There's a couple different ways of doing it. You can book a 15-minute meeting with me. We can talk about anything you want. We get anything on this podcast that interests you. We can talk about that. We can get on our newsletter list. You can just become a friend of Insightful if you'd like. We're not too salesy. We're not too pushy. We don't like to be sold to, so we don't sell to people. But we think for some people we've got some really good solutions. So we'd rather find those people and make it the right fit. And if it's not the right fit, then that's not good for anybody. So we're always trying to find the right fit. So if some of the things that you heard today resonate, then hit me up. Let's have a little conversation about it. You can tell I love to talk about this stuff.
Perfect. Yeah, again, I really appreciate you coming on and talking to me.
I appreciate it, Jared. Thanks for having us.
Hey, yeah, no, thank you.